When it comes to guiding your life decisions, the first and most important step is clarity of vision. Think about it. How many times do we make choices out of habit, out of pressure, or simply because that's what everyone else seems to be doing? Most of the time, it's not because we've sat down and asked ourselves, what actually matters most to me, but because we've been pulled by momentum. And the problem with momentum is that it doesn't care if you're heading in the right direction, it only cares that you keep moving. That's why clarity is not a luxury, it's the foundation. Clarity starts with stripping away noise. We live in a world that constantly tells us what should matter. Social media, advertisements, even well-meaning family and friends, they all hand you a script. Study this. Work here, buy that, live this way. And if you never pause to check whether the script matches your values, you risk waking up one day realizing you've been running at full speed towards someone else's destination. That's not guidance, that's autopilot. So, how do you step off autopilot? You create space for reflection. You ask the kinds of questions most people are too busy or too afraid to ask. What do I truly value? What kind of person do I want to become? What experiences will actually make my life meaningful? These questions don't have quick answers, and that's the point. Clarity isn't about speed, it's about precision. Now, here's something fascinating about the human brain. When you give it a clear target, it organizes itself around that vision. Neurologically, the circuits in your brain related to attention, decision, making, and motivation start working in alignment. That means when you set a clear intention, the brain literally filters the world differently. You notice opportunities that align with your goal, and you filter out distractions that don't. It's like putting on a lens that sharpens what was blurry before. Without that lens, everything feels overwhelming, scattered. With it, suddenly choices make sense because they fit into a bigger picture, but clarity doesn't mean certainty. People often confuse the two. You don't need to know every step of the path, you just need to know where you're aiming. Imagine standing in a dark forest with a flashlight. You don't see the whole road, you only see the next 10 feet. But if you know your direction, those 10 feet are enough. You take them, and then the next 10 appear. That's what clarity does. It doesn't guarantee the journey will be smooth, but it ensures you're walking towards something that matters. There's another piece here that's often overlooked. Clarity protects you from regret. Think about the decisions that haunt people later in life. They usually aren't the times they tried and failed. It's the times they acted against their own values, the times they ignored their inner compass because it was easier to follow the crowd. When you're clear about what matters, even if the outcome isn't perfect, you can live with peace. You can say, I chose this path because it aligned with who I am. And that removes the sting of what-ifs. And let's not forget clarity is dynamic. It evolves. What mattered to you at 18 might not matter at 30. What matters at 30 might not matter at 50. That's not failure, that's growth. The key is to revisit your vision often. Realign, adjust, make sure the path you're on still matches the person you're becoming. Because if you're not checking in, the world will happily redirect you without asking for your permission. Clarity is like the North Star. You don't stare at it every second, but you check in with it to make sure you're still heading in the right direction. And once you know what matters, decision-making becomes less about anxiety and more about alignment. Instead of asking, what's the easiest choice, you start asking, which choice brings me closer to my vision? That single shift changes everything. So, before you worry about the perfect strategy, the perfect timing, or even the perfect skills, step back and define what truly matters to you. Because without clarity of vision, every path looks tempting, and you'll waste your life wandering. With it, even the hardest path feels worth it, because you know exactly why you're walking it. Clarity is not about seeing everything. It's about knowing what deserves to be seen. Once you've established clarity of vision, the next question becomes, how do you sustain it? Because having a vision is one thing, but following through on it, especially when obstacles show up, is another. And this is where mindset plays the central role. Mindset is not just a motivational buzzword. It's the lens through which you interpret everything that happens to you. Two people can face the exact same challenge, and one will see it as a signal to quit, while the other sees it as a signal to grow. The difference is not intelligence, resources, or luck. It's mindset. We often think circumstances are what dictate our path, but circumstances are neutral until your mind interprets them. Your mindset decides whether that job rejection is proof that you're not good enough, or whether it's feedback that sharpens you for the next opportunity. It decides whether a failed relationship means you're broken, or whether it's teaching you what you actually value in connection. The brain is an extraordinary meaning-making machine, and the meaning you attach to events directs your path far more than the events themselves. Now, here's the fascinating part. Neuroscience shows us that the brain is plastic. It changes and reshapes itself based on experience. That means your mindset is not fixed. You're not doomed to think one way forever. Every time you choose to view a setback as a challenge instead of a catastrophe, you're rewiring circuits that make it easier to do so again. Over time, this compounds. What once felt like an unbearable obstacle starts to feel like just another part of the process. Think about how children approach learning. They fall, they stumble, they mess up, over and over, and yet they don't conclude, maybe I'm just not a walking person, or maybe I wasn't meant to talk. They keep going because their default mindset is growth. Somewhere along the way, we unlearn that. We start labeling ourselves. I'm not good at math. I'm not creative. I just don't have discipline. But those are not truths. They're mindsets masquerading as truths, and if you accept them, they quietly write your future for you. Here's another layer that's important. Mindset doesn't just shape how you respond to life. It also shapes how your body responds. Studies have shown that the way you think about stress actually changes how your physiology reacts to it. If you see stress as harmful, your cardiovascular system constricts. If you see it as fuel, your body rises to the occasion with energy and focus. Same stress, different outcome because of mindset. That's how powerful it is. Now, having a growth mind, it doesn't mean blindly believing everything will be fine. That's naive optimism. A healthy mindset acknowledges difficulty, but frames it in a way that keeps you moving forward. It's saying, yes, this is hard, yes, it hurts, but this is also shaping me into the kind of person who can handle what's ahead. It's the art of turning resistance into training. So, how do you cultivate this kind of mindset? You start with awareness. Catch the moments when your inner dialogue is closing doors, when you say, I can't, or I'll never, or this always happens to me. That's the fixed mindset talking. Interrupt it, replace it with, I can't yet, or this is difficult now, but I'm learning. Small shifts in language lead to massive shifts in behavior over time, and surround yourself with people who reinforce this way of thinking. Mindset is contagious. Spend time around people who treat setbacks as opportunities, and you'll start to do the same. Spend time around people who see problems everywhere, and you'll start adopting that outlook too. Your brain is always tuning itself to its environment. Choose that environment carefully. The truth is, your path in life won't be determined by how easy or hard it is. It will be determined by how you respond to the difficulty. And the response you choose is a direct reflection of your mindset. So, if clarity of vision gives you your North Star, mindset is the fuel that keeps you walking toward it, no matter how stormy the night gets. Your path isn't defined by what happens, it's defined by how you choose to see what happens. When you've defined your vision and built a mindset that supports it, the next challenge becomes knowing how to actually make decisions along the way. And here's where many people get stuck, because we're often told to rely exclusively on logic, or to trust our gut and ignore everything else. But the truth is, the most powerful decisions come from balancing the two, logic and intuition working together, not against each other. Logic is your map. It's the rational process of weighing pros and cons, looking at evidence, analyzing patterns, and calculating outcomes. It gives you structure, clarity, and protection from reckless impulses. But logic has its limits. If you try to run your whole life on spreadsheets and cost-benefit analyses, you'll miss the deeper signals, the ones that can't be measured with numbers alone. That's where intuition enters. Intuition is not some mystical force. It's your brain's way of recognizing patterns faster than your conscious mind can process. All of your experiences, lessons, and observations get stored, and sometimes your body knows before your head does. That gut feeling isn't random. It's your nervous system pulling from thousands of micro memories and associations condensed into a quick signal. Ignoring that is like muting an internal compass that evolution spent millions of years refining. The mistake people make is thinking they have to choose one or the other. In reality, the most effective decision-making happens when you give each side a voice. Imagine a courtroom where only one witness is allowed to speak. It would be incomplete. But if logic presents the evidence and intuition testifies about the undercurrents, then the decision you make has both structure and depth. Think of times in your life when you followed logic alone. Maybe the numbers made sense, the job looked perfect on paper, the relationship checked every box. But something inside you whispered, "This isn't it." And later, you discovered that whisper was right. Or think of the opposite when you followed intuition without grounding it in logic. Maybe you jumped into something out of pure excitement without considering the consequences and later paid the price. Those extremes teach us that the balance is not just wise, it's necessary. The brain itself supports this idea. Different networks govern analytical thinking and intuitive processing, and the most adaptable individuals are those who can shift between them fluidly. Rigidity in either direction creates blind spots. Flexibility creates wisdom. One of the most practical ways to do this is to create a pause between stimulus and response. When you're faced with a big decision, take the time to gather information. Lay out the logical side clearly. What are the tangible pros and cons? What's the evidence? Then, step away from the data. Give yourself silence, movement, or space. Often, in that quiet, intuition speaks. You'll notice how your body feels when you imagine each path, tension, excitement, calm. That embodied response is information just as real as the numbers on a page. And here's something important. Intuition grows stronger with clarity and mindset. If you've done the work to define your values and train your perspective, your intuition will often align with those values. But if you haven't, intuition can be clouded by fear, old wounds, or habits. That's why the earlier steps matter. When your vision is clear and your mindset is strong, intuition becomes sharper, more reliable. Some of the greatest breakthroughs in history came from this union. Scientists who followed the data but also trusted the hunch that nobody else could see. Artists who honed their craft with discipline but allowed inspiration to guide the next brushstroke. Leaders who studied the facts yet trusted the subtle sense that told them the timing was right. It's never been logic versus intuition. It's always been logic and intuition. So as you walk your path, don't silence either voice. Listen to the head and the heart, the map and the compass. When they align, the decision becomes powerful. And when they diverge, it's a signal to pause, reflect, and look deeper, because the truth is probably hiding in the space between them. The best decisions are not made by logic alone or by intuition alone, but by the strength of both working as one. Even with clarity of vision, the right mindset, and a balance between logic and intuition, you're still going to encounter one reality you cannot avoid: failure. Every single path worth walking includes it. And yet, most people treat failure as a final verdict, when in truth, it's one of the most powerful forms of guidance life offers. Failure isn't the opposite of progress, it's part of progress. If you think about your own life, the moments that shaped you most deeply were not the smooth, easy wins. They were the moments when something broke, when you were forced to adjust, when the plan fell apart and you had to figure out who you were without it. That's where growth takes place. The human brain is built for adaptation. Every time you fail, your nervous system records that experience, updates its models, and prepares you to handle the next attempt with more precision. This is how learning happens at every level, whether it's a baby falling before it walks, or a scientist running 1,000 experiments before one works. Failure is information, it's feedback, it's your personal coach showing you the gap between where you are and where you want to be. The problem is, most people stop at the pain. They feel the sting of a mistake and conclude, that's it, I'm not cut out for this. But the sting is not the message. The sting is the signal to pay attention. If you lean into it instead of running from it, failure becomes a map. It tells you what to adjust, what to strengthen, what to let go of. Without that map, you'd be lost in illusions about your own ability. Consider how athletes train. No one expects to master a skill without falling short hundreds of times. In fact, failure is built into practice. They push until they miss, because that's the only way to find their limits and expand them. Life works the same way. If you're not failing at anything, it's probably because you're playing too small. You're staying inside a comfort zone that doesn't stretch you, and a comfort zone might feel safe, but it quietly robs you of the chance to grow into your potential. Failure also builds resilience. Each time you face a setback and rise again, you're training not just your skills, but your identity. You begin to see yourself as someone who can withstand difficulty. That sense of resilience carries over into every area of life. It's not just about the one obstacle, it's about knowing you can face the next one, and that confidence is priceless. There's another gift hidden in failure, redirection. Sometimes what feels like a dead end is really life closing a door that was never meant for you. How many times have you looked back at something you desperately wanted, only to realize later that not getting it led you somewhere far better? Failure often protects you from paths that don't truly align with your vision. It hurts in the moment, but in hindsight, it reveals itself as a form of guidance. Of course, none of this makes failure pleasant. It's uncomfortable, it challenges your ego, it can make you question your worth. But if you see it as training, not condemnation, it transforms from an enemy into an ally. And when you combine this perspective with the clarity of vision you've established, the mindset you've cultivated, and the balance between logic and intuition you've been practicing, failure stops being a reason to quit. It becomes proof you're on the path. In fact, the only real failure is refusing to learn. As long as you extract the lesson, adjust your approach, and keep moving, every so-called failure is just progress in disguise. So don't fear the wrong turns, the stumbles, or the moments when things fall apart. Fear standing still. Fear choosing comfort over growth. Because in the end, failure is not the thing that blocks your path. Failure is the path. Even with clarity of vision, a strong mindset, the balance of logic and intuition, and the lessons drawn from failure, there's another force that shapes your path more than most people realize, the people you allow into your life. Because no matter how strong, disciplined, or independent you believe you are, your environment will always influence you. And the greatest part of that environment is the company you keep. Human beings are wired for connection. Our brains evolved to tune themselves to the patterns of the people around us. It's not just social, it's neurological. If you spend enough time around people who are cynical, negative, and always looking for problems, you start to internalize that outlook. You don't even notice it happening, but their world, you becomes part of your own. On the other hand, if you surround yourself with people who challenge you, who push you to grow, who live with purpose, you begin to mirror that as well. This isn't willpower, it's biology. Think about how subtle it is. The language your peers use becomes the language you use. The standards they live by slowly become the standards you tolerate. If everyone around you shrugs off mediocrity, you'll feel pressure to do the same, even if deep down you know you're capable of more. And the opposite is true as well. If you spend time with people who refuse to settle, you'll start feeling uneasy if you're not reaching higher yourself. This is why choosing your circle is not just about friendship, it's about direction. The people closest to you act like a compass, constantly nudging your trajectory, often without you realizing it. And this influence shows up most clearly when you're at a crossroads. When you're unsure, when you're doubting, when you're deciding whether to give up or keep going. That's when the voices around you become the loudest. The wrong voices will confirm your fears. The right voices will remind you of your strength. Mentorship is one of the most powerful examples of this. A mentor doesn't just share knowledge, they embody possibility. Seeing someone walk a path ahead of you rewires your brain's belief in what's possible. It's no longer a vague dream, it's a lived reality right in front of you, and sometimes that single shift from maybe to definitely possible is enough to change the trajectory of your life. But this isn't just about finding mentors or role models, it's also about the peers you choose. Friends, colleagues, partners, these relationships either reinforce your vision or pull you away from it. And here's the difficult truth. Sometimes, the people who love you the most are the ones least able to support your growth. Not because they want to hold you back, but because your growth challenges their comfort. They may project their fears onto you, encourage you to play small, or warn you against taking risks. If you're not careful, you'll mistake their caution for wisdom. That's why protecting your circle isn't selfish, it's essential. Because every decision you make is shaped not only by your vision, mindset, and intuition, but also by the subtle pressures of those around you. If your circle doesn't reflect the life you're aiming for, it will slowly pull you off course, no matter how strong your intentions are. So the task is simple, but not easy. Curate your environment. Seek out those who align with your values. Spend time with people whose lives reflect the kind of discipline, courage, and clarity you aspire to. Limit the influence of those who drag you back into old patterns, and when possible, be that person for others, because just as you're shaped by your circle, you're shaping theirs too. In the end, the path you walk is never walked alone. Every voice, every presence, every relationship leaves an imprint on your direction. So choose wisely, because your circle is either your anchor or your wind. By now, you can see how clarity of vision, a resilient mindset, the balance of logic and intuition, the lessons drawn from failure, and the influence of the right people all come together to shape your path. But there's one more piece that transforms all of this from theory into reality: consistent action. Without action, everything else remains an idea. Vision becomes daydream, mindset becomes talk, intuition becomes a whisper ignored. It's movement, repeated over time, that turns potential into a lived life. The challenge is that action rarely feels glamorous. We picture success as this sudden breakthrough, a lightning strike that changes everything, but in reality, success is built out of thousands of small, often boring, steps taken day after day. It's waking up when you don't feel like it. It's choosing to make the hard call instead of putting it off. It's practicing when no one is watching. Consistency is not dramatic, but it's unstoppable. Think of water cutting through rock. It's not the force of one wave, it's the persistence of countless drops over time. That's how progress works. Every small step compounds, building momentum that eventually becomes impossible to ignore. And here's the secret: once you take the first step, action creates its own energy. The brain is wired so that effort itself triggers dopamine, the neurochemical that drives motivation. In other words, you don't wait for motivation to act, you act, and motivation follows, of course. Action doesn't mean rigidity. Life is not a straight line. Even with the clearest vision, there will be times you need to adjust your course. That's not failure, it's refinement. Pilots don't fly in a perfect line to their destination. They make constant micro-adjustments, correcting for wind, weather, and drift. Your life works the same way. You set the destination, you take consistent steps, and you adjust as you go. The point is not perfection, it's persistence. This is where so many people get stuck. They wait for the perfect plan, the perfect timing, the perfect conditions. But perfection never arrives, and while they wait, the opportunity slips past. Action doesn't require perfection, it requires movement. Even a flawed step forward teaches more than endless planning, because every step gives you feedback, and feedback sharpens your path. And here's something else to remember. Consistency builds identity. Every time you act, you're casting a vote for the kind of person you are. When you consistently choose courage over fear, discipline over comfort, effort over excuses, you're not just reaching goals. You're shaping yourself into someone who lives with integrity. That identity becomes the anchor that carries you through uncertainty. But action isn't just about individual effort. It's also about the example you set. When people see you living in alignment with your vision, showing up consistently, and adjusting without giving up, you give them permission to do the same. Your consistency doesn't just move your own life forward, it lights the path for others. So when the doubts come, when you feel like progress is too slow, remember that every step counts. You may not see the full picture yet, but momentum is building beneath the surface. And when you combine action with clarity, mindset, intuition, resilience, and the right circle, your path becomes unstoppable, not because it's easy, but because you've built the discipline to keep moving no matter what. At the end of the day, it's not the grand intentions, the carefully crafted plans, or even the inspiring words that define a life. It's the actions repeated again and again that carve your path. The future doesn't belong to those who dream. It belongs to those who do.